Imagine your thoughts are like a ripple in a pond. Every thought creates a wave. What kind of waves are you sending out into the world right now through the thoughts you're thinking? I'm Meredith McCarthy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and we're going to talk about that idea of thoughts creating something. And today we've got Teresa Saunders, my fellow colleague, joining me. So I hope you enjoy this conversation that we have.
Hi, Meredith.
Hello. How's it going?
Good, thank you. And yourself?
Good. So when we're looking at that idea of ripples in a pond, I can remember driving to Wellington one day and this weird thought came into my head, and it was so profound, I actually got a pen and at the lights I wrote it on my hand. And it was simply this: every thought is like a ripple in a pond, changing forever this moment in time. And it just went into my head. And I think that's a good way to think about our thoughts and how they affect the energy, how they affect our lives around us, that quality of thinking. When we're thinking about that idea, what comes into your mind, Teresa?
I think it's like when you look on the water, if you go and look at calm water and then you see it start to move and the disturbance, and depending on how breezy it is or what the environment is, so how the water actually moves and change. And I believe that's like our thoughts as well, that ripple effect.
Yeah, if there's a storm around, quite often our thoughts aren't really heard that well either.
This is true, yeah.
No, there's too much disturbance and we're not able to get that clarity. So if we think about self-hypnosis and coming into stillness and having that focus point of attention and setting an intention and then paying attention, rolling that dress rehearsal in our mind, I think as hypnotherapists, it's something we do guide our clients through, don't we?
Yes, for sure. You know, one of the other things I think is nice as hypnotherapists, if people are sort of worrying about the chatter in the mind and that ripple effect, is to actually ask them what, 0 to 10 of what their actual thoughts are at that moment in their mind, how busy it is. And then do an exercise and check in afterwards and see the difference, what the change actually is.
Yeah. A lot of my clients will come out of a hypnotic journey being quite profoundly relaxed, more so than they have for many years, where they're able to focus for a period of time just on a singular journey. But that's not everyone's experience either. So let's just normalize. People do sort of drift off into their own thoughts and then come back to my voice, and then drift off into their thoughts and come back to my voice. And that is normal as well. Some people are going to do that less and some people are going to do that more. Not everyone is going to have complete single pointed attention the whole entire time. I think that's important to normalize.
I mean, I have some clients that actually say, well, I don't really remember what you actually did. Did you actually say anything? How long have I been under? And it could be like 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes or longer. And yet they just remember sort of counting down to that relaxation state, and then they wake up. But they notice a difference in how they're feeling, a positive
Exactly. Yeah. Well, noticing that difference and thinking about what is the difference they want to create. This is where we come back to the client, don't we? And we're getting to understand a little bit more about what it is that they want from that session, and then amplifying that message in some way. What comes into your mind when you think about working with clients and those intentions?
I think you've got to be really client focused and move yourself away from that, because what is their normal? Their normal is going to be different to my normal, to your normal, so we've got to sort of allow them to walk in their own footsteps and not in ours. We're not the ones that make the change. The client's the one that makes that change.
Can you think of an example of maybe a client issue that would be a typical thing that people would come in for?
When they're just completely stressed out, it could be just life and workload. You've got to take the children to school and you've got a job and a husband and home and you just can't juggle stuff like that. And a lot of us can relate to those sort of circumstances, because that's family life.
Mm.
But how much tips me for being overwhelmed and how much tips you and the client for being overwhelmed can be completely different. So we need to normalize it for them as well and not sort of think, oh, it's nothing, I do 10 times the amount that they're actually saying about.
Yeah, for sure. If we think about someone's list of things they want help with, quite often they do come in with quite a mighty list. And sometimes those things on that list are interrelated, but sometimes they're not, that they can sit separately. And it's important, I think, within a session not to overwhelm the client with trying to fix everything all in one. That we need to sometimes invite them to think, well, what's the priority here? What would make the biggest impact for you right now to use this time wisely? And really get the client to own that. If, for example, you see the list, you might come up with your own biased, what you think is more important. But it's important that we remember to come back to the client and ask the client what is important to them. Just because they wrote that thing in that first column doesn't mean that that's the most important thing. It could have been the last thing that they feel most embarrassed about that is actually the heaviest thing that's weighing on their mind.
And often it's taking that time for them, that is one of those last things. And it can simply be setting yourself 10 minutes in the morning to do a short meditation or some breath work that makes a huge difference and change in their energy.
Yeah, when I journey someone through learning to go into self-hypnosis and using the breath technique in twice in a row through your nostrils and then slowly out and then closing their eyes and doing that dress rehearsal, when a client has been still struggling, chances are high they haven't been practicing it. Those clients that have been practicing that little technique maybe 4 times a day, just in a couple of minutes, that's it. Benefit. They definitely have a measured difference in the outcome of how they feel overall. So it is important sometimes as a client is presenting a situation to go, okay, well, how do we get that client to manage things outside of the session? What could they really own that's going to help them to think about the thoughts that they want rippling, that they want to generate through them and into their world around them. If they're getting caught up in thinking about how it's going to be a struggle, then it will be a struggle because that's the ripple effect that word will bring. If, however, they say it's going to get easier and easier from here, then that's going to be the ripple effect that they start to create. So I think I do spend a lot of time with my clients and talk to them about the importance of how they phrase it to themselves, how they invite that intention into existence.
Yeah, for sure. And like you're saying about the homework as such, what to take forward with them. I mean, if you're wanting to have that ripple effect, then you can't always expect one session of hypnotherapy and then that your life's going to be good, and there's no more work to actually do. You look at other times of things where you think you can actually utilize what you've learnt and so your self-hypnosis and reinforce it by doing it a few times. I mean, you could, as a hypnotherapist, put in an anchor so that they don't have to do the the self-hypnosis. They can just put their fingers together or touch their necklace, whatever you've used as the anchor to take them to that calm, sort of quiet ripple effect.
Because what wires together fires together. So when we're talking about anchors, for those that haven't come across that yet, we have talked about anchoring, and there are specific podcasts that we've done just on anchors and creating them, stacking them, and all of those things. But yeah, it can be a word anchor. So every time you say calm, or every time you say I am strong, it could be a phrase, it instantly takes you into a really resourceful state. So you can absolutely reinforce the cause and effect of that anchor. It could be a touch anchor, like Teresa was saying, touching your necklace, or you're putting your fingers together. It could be a breath anchor. So every time you take a deep breath, hold it for a moment and slowly let it go, you sink into a very deep state of calm where you're able to think things really logically through and make really great decisions in any situation, time or place, So we can begin to anchor in the cause and effect of how we want the anchor to behave. It could also be a visual anchor. So it could be every time you walk through the door of your house or your home or your office, you immediately have a feeling of, and, what is that client wanting to feel? So you're going to anchor in the desired state that the client is seeking. They can be very, very powerful exercises to get the client to do. But it can also be a post-hypnotic anchor where the client just activates it because you've suggested it. It happens immediately, where they don't have to be thinking too much about it consciously. You've primed it. You've primed it to be triggered when they get into that situation. It could also be a music anchor. I like to talk to people about using music to change their state of mind. We've talked about that in the Frequency of Thoughts series, so you might want to check that out too. But when we're looking at that, that's an anchor that we can create. And it could be, hey, I want you to think about a happy theme song, that every time you think about that, it makes you smile, makes you feel good. And is that something that you could use every time you want to just lift your mood? Could you bring your theme song to your mind, and just have that playing in your mind? So it doesn't actually have to be a physical listening to it, in real time. It can be something that you're playing in your mind's eye. That can be extremely useful when we're looking at creating different types or styles of anchors that a client may utilize. Yeah. What have you got anything you'd like to add to that, Teresa?
Just that, our thoughts do change throughout the day, and different environments and incidents that happen throughout the day do change our thoughts. So remembering to actually bring something like that, like the happy music or an anchor that you've done, or just noticing that attention and changing your thought pattern again, which will bring that, we've talked about the ripple effects. So we'll have that calm, and then it could be sort of building up because our energy's changed and we're getting a bit more heightened or stressed, anxious. Then we could listen to some quiet music or use our anchor, and we change that ripple effect and bring it back down to the calm again. So it's something that's movable.
And actually, we could use that analogy for our client's hypnotic journey if we wanted. We could absolutely use that as a metaphor. It's a universal metaphor that most people can understand. So this is quite useful to have a couple of those universal metaphors up your sleeve. Like a ripple in a pond, you can begin to change the energy in which those thoughts serve you, and you can calm that thought right down, or you can lift that thought to that energetic pace that you want to live. So you can begin to play with language and play with suggestion and layer that into the metaphor and how you want that metaphor to be utilized. It could be... Sorry, you go.
Here's something I just thought about while you're talking about that. Now, couldn't we just flip that? So if somebody was actually really anxious and we wanted them to create a ripple in the pond with things that were annoying them and their frustrations, they could actually throw rocks and they could look at how those ripples actually, well, they might not be ripples, they could be waves that they actually create, but how do they feel after they've let them go?
Absolutely. We could use the submodalities idea of imagining that feeling or thought that they don't want to hold on to anymore as a shape, a color, a texture, a weight, and then imagining throwing that into the pond and letting that pond take care of it. So it's letting them release whatever that is that no longer serves them, and allowing the energy of the water and that feeling of it going splash or plonk or whatever noise it might make, and having that feeling of satisfaction of letting it go. Absolutely. We can play around with what we call submodalities, the way we describe a particular emotion. We can describe that emotion through different sensory words. Okay, so we've got the VACOG system, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. So we have different ways of describing things. So how many of you can relate to saying, yeah, it just leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth? So you're describing and you're using what we call submodality language to describe a sensation of something emotional that you've had to try and digest. That's another one. It's hard to digest. It's not literally hard to digest, like you're not eating it, but that situation is hard to digest. So we often use metaphors around how we're describing the submodalities or how that sensory system is actually experiencing that moment. We can play around with that, can't we? Yeah?
Yeah, for sure. And you can have fun playing around with that too. And I mean, some people use more than one sense, and other people don't use very many senses. So we're all different. So it's something else to bear in mind when you're actually working with your client as well. Perhaps asking some questions before and seeing whether they tell you about the sounds or the colours or the smells or the taste first. What do they actually describe to you? How do they describe it?
And you absolutely play with what they bring. So it's not about you saying, is it red? What colour is it to you? Like you might notice that, but they might naturally, come up with a description, say, it really weighs me down. Now that is a submodality talking, it's a weight, it's weighing, it's heavy, right? And you could say, where is it weighing you down? Can you point to that space? And they might go, my shoulders, or it's a weight on my head, or it's weighing down my heart. They might actually have a different area in their body that they're talking about where that energy is sitting.
It's the same as like we were saying earlier about casting the stone into the river for the ripple effect. With the submodalities, they might not want to throw a stone. They might want to smash it up or, scribble it out or something like that. So it's important to remember to allow them to say, so how would you like to get rid of it? What would you like to do? Yeah.
Now, it could be that the stone is cold and they could hold it in their hands and warm it up. And that could feel really healing. It could be, so anything. Like you've got to get into the client's world and sort of go, what does that mean for them? What does water mean for them? It may not be that they have a connection to water. So they could have a connection to something else, to use that they have a connection with. Today we're just playing around with that idea of a ripple in a pond, So that's what we're talking about. But definitely, it's just tuning into the client and what is their language, what are their metaphors, and can we play with those? Because they are creating ripples of energy through that body's experience on all of those levels.
Yep, so let's be fun, be creative, and see where it leads.
Absolutely. I hope you've enjoyed today's talk time. We've got more in the series of the idea of thoughts and the frequency of thoughts. So tune in again next week for that. We have also, some other series coming up, and we're feeling quite excited about that, aren't we, Teresa?
Yeah. Bring on the new year.
So if you want to subscribe, like and share, subscribe and all of those things, then you can come along on that journey and discover what we're up to.
And drop a comment. Ask us a question feel free to. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you are interested in learning how to be a hypnotherapist or work with people, or even just a little bit more about hypnosis, go visit the website nzach.ac.nz, and you can find out more there. Look, it's been wonderful having you along again, Teresa, to powwow with and, really unpack a few ideas and thoughts.
Thank you, Meredith. It's always a delight to come along, and I look forward to the talk time each week.
Excellent. I hope everyone's going well, and I hope you'll tune in next week for our next talk time. So for now, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.